Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. As you saw, this is not going to be like any other video that I make. It's going to be a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more serious. So if you want, you can come back another time for another one of my videos, or just go ahead and check out the other videos if you'd like. So I was reading the book of John and something stuck out to me. And I was like, you know, what better time to share a little bit of what God has done in my life than now, especially since now Easter has passed. So we're gonna jump right into this. I hope this is gonna be a pretty quick video. But anyway, so it's in the book of John, chapter 20. Don't worry about the Bible, it'll show up right here somewhere. Book of John, chapter 20, verse 24 to 27. So it says, "Now Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12 disciples, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, 'We have seen the Lord.' But he said to them, 'Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand in his side, I will not believe.'" Verse 26, "A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, 'Peace be with you.'" Verse 27, "Then he said to Thomas, 'Put your finger here. See my hand. Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Stop doubting and believe.'" So what has just happened is Jesus has just been crucified on Good Friday, and 3 days after, he has just been resurrected on Easter Sunday. And within the last 40 days he was here on earth, he goes and visits his disciples, right? And Thomas was not with the disciples when Jesus ended up visiting them. So we see here that Thomas, we also know him as Doubting Thomas, he does not believe them until and unless he sees the scars that wounded Jesus. He really wants to see Jesus' scars. He wants to see that it was really Jesus and not an imposer. And he wants to see the scars where Jesus was wounded to be hung on the cross. The nails that held him back on the cross. Because Thomas wanted to see what Jesus had been through. Because Jesus' scars told a story. "I was once dead, but now alive. I was once broken and shattered, but now made whole." With that in mind, I want to ask you a question. Where have you been wounded? I'm going to get very vulnerable in this video, and I hope you're able to get vulnerable with me, because just like him, we have scars from the things and events that once wounded us. So we all have a story, and I have actually been fortunate enough and blessed by God that I have amazing, loving, God-fearing parents who raised me up to the man that you see in front of you today. And of course, me being my own person, throughout my 20 years of life, I have been very naive and always giving people the benefit of the doubt and always seeing the good in people, you know? And having that in me, I would find myself getting hurt. Not physically, of course, but having those internal wounds, those invisible wounds, you could say. I would never stop and ask myself, hey, why do you keep getting hurt over and over again? I would find myself getting hurt, bundling it all up, keeping it all inside, and running different scenarios in my mind to see how things could have gone differently and how things could have been better. And I would always blame myself for what happened, when in reality, it actually was never my fault. So I would always keep to myself and, you know, just not share anything that was going on with anybody. And, you know, there were times where I would open myself up to people and think that they would have the best intentions for you and they would be behind your back the whole time. But instead of being behind your back the whole time, they end up backstabbing you, which kind of just added on to more of the, oh, I can't trust anyone, and because of all this hurt, I can't do it anymore. And so, you know, I started adding on and holding on to more of the things or anyone or anything that had ever hurt me, or anything or anyone that would ever offend me. I would hold on to it, and I would not find any room for forgiveness. And, you know, I would ask God for help. And honestly, there were times where I would have a little bit of breathing room, but then the cycle would start all over again. And, you know, honestly, I got a little frustrated, and I had an honest conversation with God. I said, "God, why can't you just break these chains off of me? I want to have the freedom that I once did." And God really started dealing with me and talking to me. And he said, "I have given you freedom and I have given you forgiveness. But how can you expect to walk in that freedom and forgiveness if you're still holding on to the things from the past? And how can you expect to walk forward in faith if you're still holding on to the things from the past?" So I started searching myself and really found where the wounds were. And found where the healing needed to take place for a new scar. See, you might not have the same nails that had me bound, but we have the wounds that require the same type of healing. You'll never be pretty enough. You'll never be worthy of my love. You were just a mistake. Your parents never loved you, and that's why they walked out on you when you were a kid. See, I know many people that have been abused and that have had messed up relationships. But see, those nails that were once there leave a wound when they're gone. But that wound will still be a wound until and unless you learn how to forgive. And forgiveness does not mean that it never happened or that you can just look over it. No. And forgiveness does not mean that it never happened or that you never went through the trauma that you did. You see, it happened. We all have different wounds. We all have different parts of the story. I see some of you watching even have wounds and trauma from your past that you're not really proud of, that no one knows about. And there's some things that you're not proud of. Hey, I've been there. It happened. We've all felt short of the glory of God. We have a heavenly Father that loves you and has forgiven you. And here's the thing though, sometimes it's easy to forgive the other person. God help me. The easiest thing for me is to forgive the other person. It always has. Now that might be the easy part, but the hardest part is you forgiving yourself for what happened, for what you did, for what could have happened. You need to forgive yourself. You see, the hardest person you will ever forgive is not your ex. It's not the person that did you wrong in your past. It's not your coworker. It's not your parents. It's you. You see, most of the time, it's your self-inflicted nails that you have the hardest time letting go of. You see, if I'm still holding on to the things from the past with a tight clenched fist, how can I expect to receive God's forgiveness? How can I expect to receive God's mercy? You can't. You have to let go of the past in order to receive what God is trying to give you. If I'm still holding on to the past with a tight clenched fist, how can I expect to receive God's forgiveness? My hands are already filled with the past. How can I expect to receive something new from God? You can't, because your hands are full. So you have to let go of the past so your hand is now open and ready to receive God's forgiveness. You have to open up your hand and let go of the past so you can receive God's sweet, sweet mercy. You need to let go of the bitterness and receive His sweet mercy, and receive His love, and receive His forgiveness, receive the cloak of righteousness. Jesus did not show His wounds, but He showed His scars. There's a difference. Because Jesus said, look, Thomas, look at where the nails once were. Look at the nails that once held me back, where there was a wound once, but now there's a scar. Forgiveness does not mean that the pain will go away. You can sit there all night long, and honestly, you might as well get comfortable, get a blanket, because you'll be there for a long time. And yes, the pain will digress over time, and yes, one day you won't be hurting as you are hurting currently. But the memory and the feeling of that pain will still be there. See, the feeling of that pain just proves that you're human, and you can't do this without God. You need God's help. And forgiveness is not a feeling. Forgiveness is faith. It takes your faith to believe where the nails once were, where the wounds once were, is where the healing is now. See, it takes your faith and the love of God to see and realize where once there was a wound, there is now healing. You see, your wounds might make you wiser, but it's the scars that hold the story behind your wisdom.